traveling tonight.
Good evening and welcome to this committee meeting of City Council. We have a number of committees to speak tonight. The first one is the Committee of the Whole. My name is William Lutz. I'm Council President, and I am here with all members of Council, along with Mr. Kerber, Mr. Titterington, Mr. Funderburg, and Mrs. Knight, and Mayor Oda. The only item for the Committee of the Whole is to provide a recommendation regarding emergency legislation to be considered by Council related to COVID-19 to permit public meetings to be conducted remotely. Is this for Mr. Titterington or Mr. Kerber? Mr. Kerber.
This item is just given the current state that we're in right now, and a number of different communities are given some of the restrictions on contact and being around other people and some of the health risk involved with that. There is a push to go to teleconferencing for these meetings. This legislation, and we've had some direction from the Attorney General indicating that teleconferencing would be acceptable given this current state of emergency that we're in. And it would allow, and I cannot speak to the technical specifications, I think somebody else is going to talk about that, but it would allow the various city bodies to go ahead and meet in such a setting. Now, with that being said, we've been in communications with the Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association, who's been in contact with this State General Assembly. This is supposedly scheduled to be on the General Assembly's agenda tomorrow, where they may pass emergency legislation allowing this. So, but as with everything involved in this, everything's rapidly evolving. What we may be working on a couple days ago is different than our reality today. What this legislation would allow is teleconferencing for these meetings for the safety of the participants and the public as well. But also, the legislation would seek to ensure that the public would continue to have access to the meetings and so that they can follow along. It's my understanding that the platform that's going to be used is called Zoom, and this would allow any member of the public to go ahead and watch along in real time the various meetings. Of course, with this legislation, all public notice requirements would be continue in full force, so the public would be advised of when the meetings are and would have an opportunity to download or follow along on a live stream the actual meeting itself. The notice would also contain the agenda items, as well as the city would continue with the practice of setting forth packets of what information is going to be out there. But just given how rapidly this is evolving, there has been a lot of concern about continuing to meet in these settings, especially given some of the public health orders that are out. And this is geared to be mindful of the public health orders and everybody's personal safety, but keeping in mind that we need to ensure that due process is maintained for anybody with business in front of the City Council, as well as transparency and maintaining that we have an open government, a representative government.
Thank you, Mr. Kerber. Do any council members have any questions on this item?
I'm sorry.
Well, if I may.
Oh, well, yeah, and Mrs. Knight had a good point, and the legislation that we put together would indicate that other boards and commissions of the cities would also be subject to these procedures as well.
Mr. Phillips?
As far as civic input, questions to meetings and that sort of thing, my understanding that they're going to have to provide questions beforehand in writing, and that's one proposal that's been...
Well, I think there definitely needs to be a mechanism for public input, questions, either reaching out to individual, as it may be, council members, committee members, board members. There needs to be a mechanism where that the public can share any sort of comments, concerns, questions with regard to that. I have not been privy to the actual timeline as far as, you know, if there's a meeting at 7 o'clock, please get your comments in by 5 o'clock or something like that. That is one thing that it was discussed, but as far as the technical specs, when those would be in, I haven't, I don't know the particular arrangements on that, but that's something that has been discussed, and I think perhaps we need to flesh that out.
Okay.
Mr. Titterington, did you want to add to the answer?
Yes, thank you. So what we were thinking is that we can't really entertain comments during a Zoom discussion because there's a lot of chatter that could go on, muting, unmuting. That's one of the limitations, but it's a minor one. And so the suggestion and a couple of other communities, and actually talking with Grant, Grant suggested from our end is that we would post the meeting agenda and notice, as well as that email that you got that has the meeting number on it, on Friday, with a request that anybody who has any questions or comments, we would also include the link to the that email portal that you guys get when everybody gets a copy, you know, when everybody gets an email from somebody through our website, so they can go into the website and they can just type whatever their question or comment is, and then everybody should get it. If everybody doesn't get it, because sometimes people don't pick that option, then it typically comes to me. So I will be forwarding it to you, probably through Sue. We're asking that people get it to us by noon, in case they've got a question that we need to do some research on, so that we're prepared. So the 5 o'clock would probably be a little too late. Although if we get something up until the meeting, and it's something that we can express on their behalf, we will certainly do that.
To follow up, we could have members of the public text in questions to myself as president, couldn't I?
Sure.
So I could easily announce my phone number at the beginning of the meeting or at the beginning of comment time and say, if you have a question, you can text it to this question, this phone number.
If that's what you'd like to do, sure. It's just one more thing to monitor during the meeting. But
Well, could we have Ms. Karch monitor that, or have them come into a number here to have her monitor that stuff? So, I mean,
we don't have numbers here that would allow us to text through. It would have to be somebody's cell phone.
we don't have a city cell phone that we could use.
No, we don't.
It might be clunky, but I'm willing to try it.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, sure. All right. I just try to.
Mr. Schilling, I know you had some questions. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay, so what happens to our residents that have no access to email? If just for email these questions in, then there are some that don't have, the library's closed, so some people use the library for internet access, and but there are some that just don't have it, but may have a question or comment.
They can call us, during the day, and we'll take their information down and make sure it gets to you.
Or could they use the Dropbox? If they wanted to write their questions out and drop them in the Dropbox?
You mean the utility Dropbox?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
This is all uncharted territory, so.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Schweizer?
Thank you. Is there a way to put a sunset on this?
Sunset on what?
On this having these meetings online like this.
Well,
In other words, we're looking at other legislation right now that is for 90 days. And could we put a 90-day limit on this?
Well, I believe right now it's set up, right, just only during the state of emergency. And obviously, council would also have the ability, to rescind this legislation as well, if you felt that it was going on too long or something like that. So you have the ability to sunset it as a body, as a council.
Okay.
Realistically, everything is tied to the Ohio emergency declaration. So we're expecting that when that happens, that's when this would die, as well as our own emergency.
Okay. Is there a way to hold back on legislation that we may have a number of citizens wishing to comment on until after we can meet publicly and face-to-face with them? I don't know what's on the agenda looking out, but
I think you'd have to, I think the best bet would be to just discuss that legislation. One piece of legislation we've already pulled off, and we'll revisit that when normal is restored. I don't know, I don't think there's anything else that's controversial,
okay.
but of course that's up to the committee that it's assigned to.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Sneer.
In section 2, where it talks about the first meeting where there's a quorum physically present, we would go back and ratify all the actions. Does that mean that when we come back to having meetings, we will go through a list of all our actions and?
That is what that means, and that's just to avoid any sort of Monday morning quarterbacking after the facts. If somebody's suggestion what council did during this time period wasn't appropriate, it's really a matter of housekeeping.
And that would be at an official council meeting? that we
Well, it
do
would be
that?
after these extraordinary measures have ceased.
Okay. Thank you.
Council members have any further questions? I had some questions. Is this resolution specific to this emergency declaration? Or is this open-ended in which it could be used for other emergency declarations in the future?
It's specific to this one.
And it is tied to the state's declaration, not our own?
Right, correct.
Picking up on Mrs. Snee's point about ratification, when we adopt items through the virtual meeting, do those items become in effect just as if we were in a regular meeting, or do we have to wait for those items to be ratified to be in effect?
No, they would be the same effect as if it was in our typical procedures at that point in time. You know, this, and again, everybody's heard this term too much, but it is uncharted territory, and we haven't dealt with this. And it's just out of abundance of caution that we would want to go through the ratification process.
And given that next meeting we are planning to have it virtually, we can adopt something like this at a virtual meeting and it would...
Well, no, we have to, the next meeting, my understanding, would still be open, because that's when you'd have to adopt that.
Okay, so the April 6th meeting will be open to the public? Okay.
Even though we're under an order to stay at home? I mean, I thought that was the point of this.
On April 6th?
Yeah, that's what we were going to do.
Well, we need to-
You're saying we make this,
Do we need to enact this resolution tonight?
I understand.
Yeah.
Is that what your understanding was? For April 6th?
No, I figured they had to adopt the legislation. Of course, that's why I mentioned emergency meeting yesterday too.
We'll need a quick special meeting call then. We got 3 weeks, so. It's just
So we will need a future special meeting of council to adopt this resolution so that April 6th, we can begin to use the electronic virtual meetings.
That's correct.
Do council members have any comments or questions in addition?
Just one additional one.
Mrs. Sneed.
You mentioned that this is being considered in the legislature tomorrow. Is there any possibility that something they might adopt would affect what we are considering adopting?
Without a doubt, we may come back and just say, never mind.
So, okay, so there's that possibility, or there's the possibility then that if this special meeting occurs after they've acted, we could still amend this and vote on it, or would that cause?
We would take, if they pass something that required an amendment, what I would anticipate is I would report the amendment necessary and see if we could entertain a motion to amend that.
Thank you.
I believe Planning Commission has a meeting on Wednesday. They could not meet virtually until we adopt this resolution, correct?
Yeah, they intend on meeting on Wednesday here.
Okay. And so all other boards and committees would operate under that same procedure? Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Allen, did you have anything? I know you're in the crowd. Did you have anything?
Just one thing on the Zoom app or whatever, is there an ability for people to type in questions on that app like while the meeting is going?
Well, I think we're going to have a quick work session after this to kind of go more into the details of the app and how that, is that correct, Mr. Titchington?
Yes, but to answer his question, there is a chat function,
Okay.
and we'll walk through that as well. It's a matter of popping up in the middle of the screens while everybody is talking, and if you're comfortable with that, that's certainly an option. It's not something that we have to engage, it's just there. Somebody has to know where to go to look for it.
How does the committee of the whole wish to move on this? Are there any objections? The committee wishes to move forward on this item. Having nothing else for the committee of the whole, we will adjourn the meeting and we'll go into a quick work session. I don't know if we want to cut the camera.